Hey, thanks so much for tuning into the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. I'm excited to dive into this week's theme, and hopefully you are too. This week's theme is obedience. Yeah, I know. You're so excited, right? Typically, we don't like to hear the word obedience because it's paired with something that we have to do. It's an instruction, a command, a law, a regulation. And we can have a tendency to be like, don't tell me what to do, right? And that's a little bit of I don't even know what that was. You can disregard what that impression was. That was horrible. But we can get that impression or that tendency to have. But the Bible here gives us instructions. This is our instructional manual. And God is so gracious and generous, giving us clear commands to abide by. And then he gives us the promises is that when we are obedient, it's usually paired with promises, blessing, provision when we are obedient. So we're going to talk about that all week long. We're going to be diving into Deuteronomy chapter 8. This is towards the end of the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. And Moses is telling them, hey, don't forget about God. Don't forget about all the things that he has done for you. And now listen to this. Deuteronomy 8, I'll be reading verses 1 through 6. Listen to this. Be careful to follow every command I'm giving you today, so that you may live and increase and may enter and possess the land the Lord promised on oath to your ancestors. Again, that's the promised land. And he's saying, hey, remember this. Remember how the Lord, your God, led you all the way into wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. Now, you may be in a testing time right now, but understand this. It's through this testing, through the trials, that God is developing in you a perseverance. Maybe he's developing you an attitude of humility. I don't know what it is, but there is purpose in the things that we go through right now, just like there was purpose with the Israelites going through the 40 years of wandering. It was actually, they didn't need to do that. If they were actually obedient to his commands, they didn't need to wander for those 40 years. And maybe you don't need to be in your situation for longer. Maybe you just need to choose to humble. Maybe you need to choose to obey. If you're in that season, ask God. Say, okay, God, what are you trying to teach me here? What do I need to learn? How do I need to grow and develop? Because I don't want to be in this wilderness for 40 more years, or for 40 more days, or for 4 more days, or 4 hours. I don't know what it is, but go to the Lord. Okay. All right. So verse 3, he humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Man, that is a message in itself right there. We don't have time to discuss that right now, but God is so good. And he offers us things that this world would never be able to offer us. Why? Because he is so good. And what he has to offer is so much better, so much more. All right. Verse 4, your clothes. Listen to this. Have you ever wondered this? And I love this passage of scripture here, because we can read through the Bible and read through the wilderness and read through the Old Testament and think like, oh, okay, they did this. Listen to what Moses is saying here in regards to even their clothing, even the things that God provided for them. Listen, verse 4, your clothes did not wear out and your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Have you ever thought about that? They were wandering for 40 years. You would obviously, their clothes, your clothes are worn out after maybe a week or two, depending on if you have kids, especially if you have kids. These clothes did not wear out for 40 years. Their feet did not swell, did not blister, which is absolutely a miracle, something only God can do. Verse 5, know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so the Lord your God disciplines you. It's actually for your benefit. It's for my benefit. And then verse 6, observe the commands of the Lord your God, walking in obedience to him and revering him. So how do we do that? Well, it's really one step of obedience at a time. Maybe you're in a trial. Maybe you're in a wilderness season. I don't know how you got there. I don't know if it was self-inflicting. I don't know what God's doing in and through you during this time, but I do know that God has a plan and a purpose for you. Are you obeying his word? I'm going to read that verse one more time as far as that whole manna. And verse 3 says, he humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known. Basically, like, nobody knew what this substance was. And this is, listen, we have to understand this, and this needs to be our prayer today. It says, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Let that be our dependency. Let us live on the word of the Lord today. Hey, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth.